Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all here for our last live of 2025. I actually almost said 2026 simply because I've been spending so much time planning for 26 that in my head, like it's almost halfway through 2026. I don't know if any of you have the same sensation if you do a lot of forward planning that you kind of end up forgetting what year it is basically. So needless to say, we're getting well organized for the year to come. So we're going to have a lot to talk about over 2026. So it should be a lot of fun. Hi, Kathy from New York. Nice to see you there. Anyone else? Let me know. Where are you popping in from? Are you getting excited for Christmas? Are you knitting on the Trio of Light? Or I know there's a few people who the Trio of Light, they're reserving it for post-gift knitting for themselves. So maybe your Christmas present to yourself is a little bit of knitting time where you get to knit your own cardigan. So if you are planning on hanging on to it for a little bit, let me know. Or maybe you have already started. But yeah, I'm kind of curious as to whether anyone has gotten started with it yet. If you do have any questions that have popped up, last week we had the premiere live, which was just a video where I put in all of the information that kind of questions that had been coming up to that point, mainly about stripes and taking a look at buttonholes. But if there's something else you'd like to ask about, then as I'm here, it's a really good time to jump in and ask. I can see Audrey, Chattanooga. Hi, happy Christmas or happy holidays, whichever, depending on what you celebrate. We've got East Tennessee, Northern British Columbia, Portugal. We don't often have anyone from Portugal, so nice to see you in there. Claire from Devon, Elsa Louise, Toronto, Janet's in Wisconsin, Irina in Chicago, Linda from Cambridge in the UK. We have Holly from Vermont, Debbie from Edmonton in Canada. Liz, we know where you're from. Liz is up the country in Ireland. Happy Christmas to you. Actually, if Laura is listening, it would be great if we could bring up some of the gorgeous little gnomes that Liz gifted us this Christmas. They're just gorgeous. So I'm hoping that maybe someone will bring them up the stairs at some point because I totally forgotten about those. They are so cute. Anne from Northwest Arkansas. You're waiting into the new year because you're so far behind in every knitting project. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes I actually think that the anticipation, waiting for something to come is as exciting as actually knitting the project, particularly with this one because it's such a fast project. So it kind of zips along really quickly. I hear our little Christmas elf appearing up here. Thank you very much. Yes, I think that Christmas would not be Christmas without some of our just adorable little gnomes. So these were both knit and sent on to us for Christmas by Liz. Liz, I know that you can pop up the pattern up there, Liz, if you've got the name of the pattern. I don't know it offhand. They're knit in various different newer yarns. I think we saw some of these are newer worsted, a little bit newer sport, but I particularly love the fact that because they're weighted in the bottom, they actually sit very well by themselves. But it gives you a really good idea of how many interesting color combinations you can actually do with Nua. So you never know. Maybe there's some new stripe combinations coming here. Like in particularly, this one here is Frog on the Wall, the green, and Unexpected Macaw. And I think those stripes are amazing. Like particularly for a child's cardigan, like how much fun would that be? So, I mean, the main thing with this, I think with stripes is don't be afraid to play around a little bit with color, particularly once there's one dominant color like this. There's one dominant color, and then the thinking for me behind those trio of stripes is that it forms another stitch pattern that basically repeats going down. So each of those trio or threes are going to basically create a little stitch pattern that sits over the solid background color as they're going down. I have a quick look up here, make sure I didn't miss any questions that came in. And we've got, hey Mel, coming in from Rochester. Cecilia, from Alabama, your sweater got put on hold after your husband broke his leg skiing. Oh no. I guess, yeah, you're probably doing double duty in the house now because there's just, your husband's out of commission. Tracy from Belfast, and yeah, happy Christmas season to all of you out there. Audrey, you're finished Maeve and you're thinking about using I-cord rather than ribbing for the sleeve and the hem. Is that on Maeve you were thinking about it? If it's on Maeve, it could work. I would still be worried about I-cord and Maeve about it being a little too tight. If you were thinking about using I-cord on this, then yeah, it should work fine. But yeah, not sure which one you're putting the I-cord on, so you can kind of pop that up there. Yeah, they are so cute, aren't they? And Liz popped it up. The pattern is New Gnome by Susan Anderson. So anyone curious about this? This is a Susan Anderson pattern from Barlett Wool Company, made in various newer colors. So I think everyone's going to need some Christmas gnomes hanging around because they're just too cute. But yeah, so if any of you have any questions popping up in relation to the pattern, do let me know. I was going to just put up a couple of different colors and talk about different color combinations today. We did it a small bit in the other video, but there was a few particularly slightly more unusual ones that I thought might be very helpful. I was just saying, Holly, I hope you can chat about the Trio of Light sleeves. I can, if there's something in particular in relation to the sleeves you'd like me to talk about, give me a shout. But I can talk in general about them. So here are various different jas combinations. This is turf, so it's a very deep, rich brown color. And this one here is the heat. So it's a very, very dark red with, you can see there's a lot of blue flecks and orange flecks and different color flecks through. So something like this is actually going to give you very, very subtle, very, very soft combinations. And you can and when you're doing color combinations like this, you can actually make really different looking cardigans depending on which one you're going to make as the main color. So if you went with the brown as the main color, then it's going to have the same similar idea to this because the background is going to be the dark color, which would be this, and then slightly light shade of stripes. But again, when I'm talking about, colors, even though the colors look different, if you take a black and white photo of the two of these, you're going to see that tonally they're not going to have a huge amount of difference. So it will mean that the stripes are going to look quite subtle when you do them through together. There was another one here, if I can find it. This is actually reminds me a little bit of like some of the orange stripes and things you've gotten here. So what we have here is, this is the Rowan color. So it's a rich, orangey, deep orangey color. And this one is a pale, pale blue. So this is the name of this one is Ishka. So again, when you put them up together, you wouldn't automatically go to combine them color-wise, but very often if you've got one that's primarily the dominant, the other one is just little pops of color going through, you can often actually start playing and having a lot of fun with different colors. Now, Audrey and I think Mel were thinking of using a couple of different colors. So I know that Mel, you had one color that you were using for the top and bottom stripe and a different one for the middle. So that's actually one of the testers we had as well used 3 different color stripes. So she used it basically as a way of using up waste yarn. She had one, she got plenty of the background color. And then for the stripes, she used combination of colors that she had available. One thing to bear in mind, though, of course, with that is when you're continuing your colors up along. So for me, when I'm continuing the colors up along here, I actually, for each of these for all of the sections, actually, I was able to just run them down along the inside here. Let me see, is it on this side? It's over on this side. So I was able to just twist them as I was able to bring them up. But if you've got a lot of different colors going through, you might find that it's going to work a lot better just breaking the colors and starting them again with each new section as you're going up, because otherwise you're just going to have such a thick column of strands. So that's probably going to be the biggest disadvantage of having multiple different colors going, is that it also means you've got much more where you're starting and stopping. It's probably worth taking a look at some of the videos that I've got where I weave ends in as I'm going along. So it's basically a little bit like when you're doing stranded color work, where you lift your finger over, you knit the next one, you bring it down. So it's like you're lifting it up and over for the first several stitches. So you're basically weaving those yarn tails in as you're working. So when you have an awful lot work going like this, weaving them in as you work like that is going to save you a lot of time. And it also means that that first stitch in the next row isn't going to be loose, because you're actually effectively weaving that tail in as you work through. So for me, the biggest advantage is actually not having those loose stitches. And then when I come back, I'll still do a tiny bit of weaving back, but they're fairly secure as you go through. Just having a look up here. Holly, it was going from picking up stitches for sleeves. Yeah, I can have a look at picking up stitches. Elsa Louise, Nua is the best yarn to work with. Yeah, we are big fans of Nua yarn around here for sure. Kathy, you're asking, will I talk about how to place the buttonholes? I can talk a little bit. Make sure you refer back to the previous video in terms of how to work them, because I've done a little bit on that about how to work the buttonholes and how I space them out. But I'll kind of talk a little bit about how basically how I actually do put the spacing in them as well. Picking up stitches, you're getting started, just finishing the sweater body, and that will be the next step. So Mel, you're using the combo of lime, orange, and lime stripes on navy. I know it looks so much, it's like we saw the first section and it looked really interesting. So I think that could be very fun, because I think stripes is really a great opportunity to be able to play with color in it's much more straightforward than when you're doing color work, because with that, you're really worried about getting the contrast right and having colors pop against each other, where stripes can be a little bit more fun and a bit more playful, I think, as you're working through it. We've just popped the link to the tutorial on how to weave in ends as you work there. So before I go on to talking more in detail, I did want to share with you because when I was talking last week, I said Magali did a version in Donegal yarns and in soft Donegal, and she used a cream for the background color, and then she used red for the stripes. She brought it in and showed it to us. We didn't take a photograph then, but we got to send you one in so we could show you what it looks like. So Magali cannot be here this Christmas because she's off. She's busy doing a degree, a new music degree, or finishing off a music degree. So she sent, but she has finished this. This is a photo of her finished piece. So you can see how different it looks when you have the light color background and then the brighter stripes going through, but it looks really nice. And these are the buttons that she opted to use. They're just they're 38mm wooden toggles. And with buttonholes, you can actually get away with longer toggles, because the way you slot them in, the top part is all that you need to fit in, and then the longer one will hold them in place. So the two colors, I know the photograph doesn't do justice to it, but this is the background color she used. She used this cream soft Donegal, and then she combined it with the red. So these were the two colors that she used for her photo. Where are we? For her photo here. So Magali, if you were watching, you can see your cardigan has made it onto the live, even if you're not here, but it turned out really, really beautifully. But it's just a really good idea to see how if you have a lighter color background, it makes, and then the stripes are darker, it still works, but it just gives kind of a different effect to the whole thing, basically, as you're going through. So I will come back. There's a few more things I was going to talk to you about, particularly in relation to buttons. But first of all, I'm going to talk a small bit about picking up stitches around the armhole, and also for kind of taking a look at working the buttonholes and spacing. So when you work sleeves, you've held those sleeves on the side, and then you want to come back and work them. So if you've got a barber cord where they're held on, you just slip them all on. If it's some waste yarn, you just pop them onto the needles. And then you're going to, let me turn to the side here, you're going to pick up stitches across the underarm here. Now, when you're picking up stitches, I always want the middle of the underarm to be the middle, start of the round. So I usually divide where the where the cast on stitches were, and start right in the middle. And then I'll pick up across, picking up one stitch for each of those cast on stitches. Now, what I also do that I find really helpful when you're picking up stitches is you can frequently end up getting little gaps across here and over across here. So one of the easiest ways of getting rid of those, I find, is picking up an extra stitch across the gap on each side, and then on the very next round, you just decrease it. You just knit that extra stitch with the first stitch of those held ones, and then knit the next stitch of the first one over there. So that will help get rid of that gap as you're going through. If it's not completely gone, most of the time you can tighten those stitches up a little bit, just kind of easing that extra yarn out. Or you've got the yarn tail, so you can also just seam it up as well. But doing the stitches, picking those extra up and then decreasing them is a really good starting place, because it means that it's going to make the holes as small as possible as you pick them up there. And then after that, it's a matter of working in the round coming down. Working sleeves in the round, you can use, I use magic loop because that's what I've had that cord already for the rest of it, but you can use double pointed needles. You can use 2 long circular where you use 1 entire needle to knit one side, 1 entire needle to knit the other, or you might have a shorty needle, one of those really short ones that is just the circumference of the sleeve, and you can use that as well. I don't use that because my knitting style, I need to have a longer needle and sit it onto my finger like this. So those shorty ones where they've got very short needle tips, I just don't get on with them. So, but that's why we suggest so many different ways of doing it, because every different knitting style is going to have a different needle that's going to work really well for it. So if you have not found your perfect match yet, I'd suggest experimenting, trying different techniques, find something that works for you. But regardless of what technique you use, the most important thing to remember is when you start working a small circumference in the round like that, you are going to probably find that the gauge can tighten up. So if you find your sleeves are often too tight, take a look at your gauge. Just pull your gauge square out, measure how many stitches per inch you're getting on the sleeve, and you may discover that it's actually tightened up quite a bit. So you can either go up a needle size for the sleeve if you find this is happening to you, or over the years what I've started doing is I'm just more conscious of my gauge when I'm knitting my sleeve. Relax my fingers, relax the gauge, try not to pull it in too tight. I kind of call it the sock effect. You know, when you're knitting a small circumference in a sock, the stitches get small, they get really tight, and it's kind of perfect for socks. But for a sleeve, you do not want that to happen. You want to keep the same gauge as the rest of the sweater. So those are the first 2 things that you're going to be doing when you're doing the sleeve. Pick up stitches, figuring out how you work in the round. And then from there, it's just a matter of doing your decreases. So at the start of the round, you'll have 1 decrease. At the end of the round, you'll have another. Gently steam block to figure out the length as you're going, so that if you need to adjust the length, you can move those decreases up or down to make sure they'll all fit in for you. And you can see the stripes because of the fact that you're keeping the stripe pattern going the same as the body. So if you finished on a round 4, we'll say here, then the next round that you work here will be round 5. So the sleeves are going to continue all the way down in pattern. This time it's working in the round instead of flat. So every round is knit much faster. It's knit all the way around. But the jogs are potentially something you might want to look at. Previous video we had for the premiere for the knit through has got a little section showing you how to avoid jogs. So, but I didn't worry too much about that because the fact that you can't see the underside, I don't think it didn't bother me. So that if that's something that bothers you, then absolutely, you know, you can kind of take a look at it. But I did find that it really didn't faze me. And part of it as well is if you've got decreases worked there, they also move the stitches around a little. So even without the jogs, you're going to find that those, the decreases, if you've got them happening between the stripes, are going to move the colors up and down a little bit. I kept the yarns going between those 3 stripes. I just stranded it up and then I broke it between each of the main ones. So I think they're most of the features that I kind of dealt with in terms of the sleeves. So the next one is, I'm going to move her up a little closer here. Next one is the buttonholes. So you can see when I'm doing buttonholes, I try to keep the top one within a couple of stitches of the top and the bottom one within a couple of stitches of the bottom. You can move those around a little bit. It's not terribly critical, but I'd be more inclined to move them away rather than too far up. I have seen some designers that might actually have the first button well up from the end. So that's also something, if you have got extra stitches and you don't mind having a little bit in the bottom, then don't worry too much about it. If you are working through the way the pattern is written, then it should be very straightforward. Again, we've got a video on how to do the single row buttonholes in the previous premiere, which we've got the link up there. However, if you added extra length or you took length away, then the spacing of your buttonholes is going to have moved around a small bit. And usually what I end up doing, I find really good. If you move things around and you're trying to figure out the spacing, just do it visually. Get a bunch of lockable stitch markers like this and put them in where you're going to put the buttons. So just basically between each of the stitches at the start of every buttonhole, you can pop one of these, then count off. You can see the same number of stitches, you can count off. And if you've got a couple of extra, if you've got one extra spacing here, that's fine. If you need to add an extra spacing up there, but it means that you can then kind of move around and do it all visually with markers, seeing where each of those is going to go. So if the idea of trying to figure out how to redo spacing is kind of bothering you, then that's well worth your while. With each of these buttonholes, I did a 3-stitch bind off, and then when you cast on one extra because you lift it over this next stitch afterwards to close it off. So basically there's 3 stitches in the top and the bottom, and you can see these are actually quite small. And in the pattern, we've recommended 22mm buttons, but the ones I've used in this are 25. But basically you can use 22 and it's going to work fine because the buttonholes are very tiny. But you see these ones, I've kept them. You've got to just give it a little bit of an extra push, which isn't really too much of a problem. And in fact, I did bring a bunch of different buttons up here to show you. So these buttons here this particular one is what we've used on it. And they come in a few different colors. So there's also a lighter color one. So basically, if you want to have something that matches closer to a lighter color pattern, then you can use this. And these are all 25mm. And as you can see, they do work with it and it's going to squeeze through it. If you're a little worried that your say you've got buttons at home and you're like, this could really work well. I love the way the color looks with them, but I don't know if they're going to fit. Then you can just do a little swatch. You can first of all do a swatch of the buttonhole as it's written, and then make sure that it's smaller than the button and that you have to stretch it in order to fit over it. And that will mean your button's not going to pop out. Or if you think it's a much bigger button, then you can also do a little swatch of a wider buttonhole or alternatively smaller. So just do a little swatch with a couple of buttonhole sizes and you can just experiment with your buttons and push your buttons through to see how does that fit through and try it out. So these are the 25mm options. This one is also I think these are good go-to. So these are also wooden buttons. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. These are wooden buttons and they're 25mm. They work very well with anything. I think you can't go too far wrong with wood. These are the 38mm toggles that Magali used for hers. And another option that I think would work really nicely, these are leather ones, just they're shanked. You can see the shank means there's that little loop at the back. So you tie it on at the back and then the button sticks out from the work. Benefit of ones with shanks is that you've automatically got a little gap between your one knitting and the other. So there's much less stretch on the buttonhole band. So there's 3 or 4 different colors. Oh, there's another one here. Of the leather. So these ones are all leather and just various different colors, and they're 22mm, but they will work with this cardigan as well. And the final set, I bought a few more up here. And these are all 23mm, which I think should be fine. So you've got, these are mother of pearl in green, and these are kind of faux wood ones. coconut, again, all 23 millimeters, and then these are smaller 23 millimeter wooden ones. It's very similar to the other ones I showed you. But I'm kind of curious, do any of you end up picking buttons first of all, and then getting, having a button collection at home? Because I know that's me. I've got like an actual little shelving unit, mini shelving unit that I have stuff full of buttons that I've got when I travel. Because often I don't want to bring yarn back because it's a lot bigger. So I end up, when I travel, I will buy a set of buttons and wait for the perfect project for it. Some of them are vintage buttons. When I was going to Rhinebeck, there was a stand with vintage buttons there. So I end up buying, like, if I get 10, 12 buttons, I try to get, so that if I do want it for a cardigan, I won't be one short, which is just torture. Camilla, the leather ones are gorgeous indeed. You bought them for your feature cardigans. Mother of Pearls are your most favorite ever. Yes, actually, it's actually totally true. The Mother of Pearls they're so useful because they go with everything. They're very light and they come in a variety of sizes. Kathy, how do leather buttons hold up getting wet with blocking and washing? That's actually a really, really good question. I have not tried washing the ones with the leather, so I don't know. If you're concerned with it, I know of people sometimes even sending things in for dry cleaning who will take buttons off and put them back on. So if you're concerned, you could try that. But I mean, in my experience, leather actually handles wetting and drying fairly well. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with them getting a little washed, I think, to be honest. But if anyone has experience of the leather buttons getting wet and dry again, let me know. But I do know that, like, most leather products, like leather shoes you're wearing, can handle getting wet and getting dry. So I suspect they would be okay, but could be taken off if you're a little worried about it. Holly, which buttons are the most durable? Oh, good question. Well, the ones that I've got on the cardigan, these are plastic. So plastic is probably going to be your most durable. After that, leather and wood are both going to be very good. Probably when you start going to mother of pearl, because it's a shell, that's going to be a little bit more delicate because it's got the potential to crack. But any of the, like, wood, plastic, or leather are all going to be super durable. And even the coconut, actually, I don't think these ones are coconut, and I don't think, yeah, they're all super durable. But mother of pearl is probably the only one I could think of that can potentially crack. I don't tend to use ceramic buttons because I do know that they recommend that you take those off garments when you are washing them. And that does seem like a lot of work, taking buttons off, because I don't like sewing buttons on. So the idea of having to do it a second time doesn't really appeal to me. Audrey, you have a tin of buttons from your mother, but you purchase buttons that you like when you travel. It's great. It's such a lovely small thing to be able to tuck away when you travel. So yeah, I would suggest that if you're traveling or if you pass a craft shop or somewhere interesting, then go ahead and get a little collection of buttons. I've even heard of people buying vintage clothes in order to actually use the buttons, or, as well as reuse the yarn, you can also reuse buttons. If you've got if there's a cardigan that's in very bad shape, but the buttons are beautiful, you can take those off and repurpose them as well, particularly if the buttons are still in good condition. And we've just popped up a link to our buttons on the website there. But, like, basically buttons, I think, are just a really nice way of finishing out a garment. And the benefit of having a bunch of them at home is you can try them out, particularly different size buttons. But think about whether you want to do a toggle like Magali here, a flat button that you knit through, these ones again being plastic, or whether you want to go for a shank one like the leather buttons. They'll all work. They'll look a little different, but for the ones I tend to avoid would be ceramic and metal, unless you're doing something backing behind them, because both of those be quite heavy, so they have a tendency of stretching out the front band. So unless you've got something that's really stabilized or has got a ribbon or something behind, metal in particular I tend to avoid, which is a shame because I've got a couple of really beautiful metal buttons, but when you pick them up, they're so heavy that I know that I couldn't put them on a lot of knits. They'd have to have a very durable or a very specific knit, or maybe like on a handbag or something like that, so they were a little stronger. So kind of the benefit of these lighter ones is they're not going to stretch that out in the front. So I think hopefully I've answered a lot of the questions in relation to Trio of Light. If you are hanging on to it to be your Christmas knit, I hope you enjoy it. It was my holiday knit as well, because I knit this all the way through my summer holidays in August. So as we drove around in the car, sat on the beach, I was working my way through the stripes. So it's a good one to do while you're chatting with people, because there's the only thing you have to keep track of is where the stripes are going, which is visual. So it's a lot more straightforward. We do have a couple of little treats coming up for you over the holidays, because we'll be finishing up on Monday, the 22nd, and we're going to be closed in terms of us having answering email queries and things like that until after the holidays, where it'll be a little bit on the 2nd, but most of it's going to probably be on the 5th afterwards. And that's when the shipping will resume as well at that point after the holidays. But we will have on the 1st of January, we're going to have a new pattern called Fernmore that's going to release. So keep an eye out in your inboxes. If you're in the Sweater Society, you may already have seen it. Anyone who's not in the Sweater Society, you get to see Fernmore on the 1st of January. So watch out for that. We'll send an email out about it. We've also got a new video series here that's going to be starting on, let me get the date right. 21st of December is when the first comes out, and there's 4 episodes that will come out over the holidays, and it's all about double stranding and what happens when you combine different types of yarns, different weights yarns, different types of fiber, and how you can create either color combinations or different yarn weights with those. So we're going to be working through those over the holidays, it's already been recorded, scheduled. So while we're off with our family, you still get to have lots of YouTube enjoyment. But that was something we've been meaning to do for a while, because we've been getting a lot of questions about it. And also it means that if you've got a lot of one weight yarn, but you don't have something that you need for a pattern, that will allow you to kind of have a general gauge or a general idea of what yarns are going to combine well in order to get the weight that you need for your pattern. Hi, Roger, you're looking forward to starting Kirkra in 2026, and you're choosing the color. Oh, I enjoy that. I love that. Was originally for my father, and then the second version that's up on the website, my friend knit that for her husband. But it's a very wearable sweater and fast knit, so you should have fun knitting that. And you put metal buttons on Chimera, with buttons at the back to stabilize. You love them, but they're so noisy. Oh, they clank at each other. Oh, you're totally right. But that's actually a really good idea, Anne, is that if you are using metal ones, I was saying sometimes people will put ribbons in the back, but yeah, the possibility of putting another smaller, you've seen, sometimes it's small little plastic buttons that will kind of hold it and stabilize it. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I would imagine that if it's open or it's not closed, they could potentially bang against each other. And it's like so nice of us to close for staff. And in Ireland here, Christmas holidays are kind of sacred. Everything shuts down. Most businesses shut down. Nothing's open on Christmas Day. Most are going to be closed on Christmas Eve as well. And there's Stephen's Day. The next day, most people are closed as well. So I think that it's nice to have a stretch where when you're off, other people aren't working. So it's actually, you don't have a big mountain of work waiting for you usually when you come back in January, because everyone is off. So it's not like you're trying to play catch up with the rest of the world. So I like that about Ireland, is that Christmas does feel like a real national holiday over here, which is very nice. Camilla, you use ribbon or fabric for backing when you use metal buttons. Yeah, that makes sense, because it's going to prevent any stretching and it's going to stabilize the whole thing. So that's the main thing with buttons, is just think about how heavy they are, whether you've got enough space like this coming from the side so that when you button it, it's not pulling too much on the fabric, and if the buttonhole is going to fit well around the button. So those are the main features really that you want to think about with buttons. And I would even suggest kind of have fun with, I've seen people use like a variety of different buttons. So like, for instance, if you had the, these mother of pearls are a particular color, but if you had a selection of different colors, I've seen people alternate them going down, and it's really fun. So you can kind of match your colors with your personality, so to speak. Tracy, most of you will use the Christmas holidays to catch up in your knitting. Do I take a break from all things knitting during my holidays? Um, I do not. I take a break from all things designing, but I try to forward plan my designing so that all I need to do over the holidays is knitting. Because knitting for me is still relaxing and is still my preferred thing to do when I'm unwinding. However, if I'm trying to combine it with actually designing at the same time, it's not so relaxing because things tend to go wrong. So I've got a couple of reknits of items that we want a new sample for because the yarn is no longer supplied or has gone out of stock, and I wanted to kind of refresh the pattern. So I've got a few of those that will be really good for the holidays. And I've got another cardigan that I'm down in the body section where I know what I'm doing, and it's kind of on a roll at this point. So they should all make really good holiday knits, I think. Mel, you should move to Ireland. It sounds wonderful. In terms of holidays and downtime, and I think respecting time off, I think we do for for most businesses do a pretty good job here, which it is really nice because it means that when you come back, you're refreshed and you're ready to go, and it feels like everyone has had a break, which is lovely. Holly, you love Ireland. You hope to return in 26. Any knitting retreats on the horizon for 26 and 27? Well, I do have one in 26, but it's full. We don't have any plan for 27. So just make sure you're on the newsletter and you will be the first to hear, because I would imagine we'll probably have another one in 27 again. And Mel's like, your break will give you a chance to catch up with your work in progress. Exactly. Everyone's got a chance to catch up on the knitting and chill out. So I think it's about time for me to wrap up here. It's lovely chatting with you all again here, and kind of it's getting me all excited to have a little bit of downtime, which is going to be really nice. And so from us and all of the Stone Stitches team, thank you all very much for a wonderful year, and we'll see you all in 2026. Bye.